Welcome to the Even Better podcast, where your host, Sinikka Waugh of Your Clear Next Step, brings you exciting content about making communities better by helping people get even better at work.
Welcome, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us today on our edition of the Even Better podcast. This is Sinikka Waugh, and I am so delighted to have Hanna with us today. Now, Nancy and I have met fairly recently, and I am just delighted with her joy for life and her exuberant positivity and the practical approaches that she's continuing to bring in every conversation that we've had. So I'm delighted to share Nancy's energy with our listeners today. Nancy, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you. This is a great opportunity to just share with you how life is a joy.
It is. And you live that every day. And that is so fun. So for our listeners, I'll tell you a little bit about Nancy. So she has 30 plus years in the education world. She is an inspiration. She challenges, she motivates, and she loves to celebrate others. She's a certified Christian life coach and a certified Laugh Instructor. And I got to tell you, this Laugh Instructor part is the one that has piqued my curiosity in such a phenomenal way. So whether Nancy is making you laugh or challenging you to meet your goals, I assure you she will win you over with her zest for living and her love for learning. So as you can see, there are a couple things that Nancy and I definitely have in common: that love of learning and that joy for life. So it's super fun. Nancy hasn't met a stranger, and she's made me feel so welcome in her presence and her ability to connect and draw others into her circle. She and her husband, Jeff, operate Happy Heart resources that give businesses and individuals alike the opportunity to find joy in living. So we'll have more ways to connect with Nancy as we go through this, but let's hear a little bit. Nancy is going to be talking to us today about 4 ways to get a happy heart. So we need to back up just a little bit and talk about what that happy heart thing means. But Nancy, you're going to talk to us about living with a happy heart, and we'll get to 4 ways to get a happy heart. What does that mean, though, to live with a happy heart?
Wow. I know sometimes it kind of sounds like, well, that's a strange way to look at it. But, if you look at your world, and you look at the balance in your world, and you look at where you find joy and where the forgiveness fits in, and are you growing, and where's all your peace, all of those things together combined give you a happy heart. And we find that when you have a happy heart, when you're in balance and all those things are right there in your world, then you are the best person that you can be. And let's just face it, if you're the best person you can be and I'm the best person I can be, then the world's going to be the best that it can be. And so it's just a process of really looking at what's great in my world and what do I need to work on? What do I want to look at? My husband's a retired cop and a retired pastor, and so he's really been looking at the world on both sides and struggling. And then I retired, as you said, from education with kids and went into educating and empowering adults. And we both realized we had retired from our careers, but not from our callings, because we still wanted to make a difference in the world. And so we looked at how can we empower people to be the best that they can be. And we realized it's by checking the heart and making sure that the heart is working and making sure that it is the best that it can be. So living with a happy heart is what we came up with.
Oh, that's fabulous. So in this case, it's not necessarily about, heart health from the physical standpoint, though I suspect there's some balance in there, but you're going to be helping us really check in on the content of our hearts, right? Our contentedness. I love the point that you just made, that looking to see what's great, but also what needs work. So I just want to be clear here. You're not focusing on only the good stuff and ignoring, like with rose-colored glasses, just forgetting that there's tough stuff in our lives, right?
Right. Because there is, and there always is going to be. And so it's really, how do we handle that? What do we do? And how can we still have a happy heart with the stressors that we have in our world?
For sure. And I would say we're in an era right now where there's an unreasonably high number of stressors in our world. And so I think finding a happy heart is definitely something that all of us are going to benefit from. So what does it mean to live with a happy heart? You talked a little bit about balance, but I've also heard you in our conversations before. Forgiveness, I think you just mentioned, acceptance. Let's talk through some of these, just by way of introduction. Let's balance between what and joy. What do you mean by joy or acceptance and forgiveness and growth and peace? I know these are words that you use on a regular basis. Tell us a little bit more about maybe a story or an experience in your own life or someone that you've worked with where they really found that balance or where understanding acceptance or forgiveness or growth or peace was really helpful for them.
Well, let's start with balance, because that's a basic one. And one of the things I work a lot with is communication. And we talk about balance. And when we're in balance, we're kind of even keel, even though there are stressors in our life, even though there are things. For example, when my sister had surgery, that was a stressful time. That was a time of, what if, who's going to take care of this? Who's going to take care of that? And so as a family, we looked at how to handle that. We knew it was going to be stressful. We knew she was going to need some help at home. So we made up a schedule, took turns, invited people in to help. Everybody always wants to help in those cases. So we could have some time to know that here I am helping my sister, but at the same time, I had to live my own life. At the same time, I had things I had to do at home. I had things I had to do with work. And so we had to find, where is that balance? And it's something that doesn't get talked about a lot. It's something we really need to talk about. What does that look like? And how am I going to manage it? Just the little things. My husband had cataract surgery, and just that little thing of, I had to make my schedule work so that what I had to do that day was going to be done after his surgery and after I got him home. Again, conversations to have about that balance. The joy part for me is easy because I find joy in a lot of things. But joy is that it's not that piece that I'm just happy because I'm having ice cream right now. It's that joy that I'm happy because I have a life filled with things that are important to me. And so that joy helps me in those times that aren't so happy. Yeah. That joy helps me when my last job, when it was coming to an end, and it was like, okay, what am I going to do next? I still had joy in what I was doing. I had joy in the promise of, I have gifts that I can continue to use. And that peace goes along in that same way. When you have peace in your happy heart, then even amidst all that struggle and all that chaos that's going on, you can realize, this is what I can control and this is what I can't control. And especially in today's world, with all the COVID-19 and with all the unrest, what can you control and what can't I? And then I know that. And when I realize that, then I can have peace with that. So those all come together in everyday activities and everyday situations, because I wish I could tell you, you have a happy heart and your life's free of worry and stress, and it's not. But it's how to have a happy heart in place of those things, even with those things in our life every day.
And I know I've heard you talk before, Nancy, about growth, which is part of the reason that I delight in spending time with you, is because you've got this realization that just because we're here doesn't mean we have arrived, right? We got to keep getting better and keep living our best selves, not being complacent in this moment, but finding ways to grow and get even better in that.
Definitely. When I was in college, we had an assignment one day is that we had to come with a life motto. And I laughed because all my classmates came in with this paper and they were writing stuff. And my life motto was living to learn and learning to live. Because I think it's a process every day. I would hate to think that I'm the same person I was last Thursday,
right?
Last Friday, whenever. I want to be changing and growing. I want to be more aware of things. I want to be looking at what can I do differently? What's going well? What can I do? How can I help the neighbors? How can I serve at my church? How can I help a friend who's sad? Whatever. It's just looking at what am I doing to be a different person, to be a person that is even adding more positivity to the world.
Oh, love it. Love it. Okay. So let's dive in. You have come up with, or you're sharing with our listeners today, 4 ways to get a happy heart. So 4 ways to get a happy heart. The first one that you described was living your faith. So let's unpack that a little bit. What do you mean by that, Nancy?
Well, that's a basis for me because my faith is the basis of who I am and what I do. But I really want us to look at, do you have a faith and are you living that faith? Because there's a difference. There's a lot of people who have faith. There's a lot of people who believe in their God. And I'm talking the Christian faith. I know there are other faiths out there that the same thing. Are you living what your faith says? And so I look at different ways to figure that out. For example, the Bible is obviously the foundation of my faith. And I can read the Bible and have a faith. And that's all good. But the question is, am I living the Bible? Because if I'm going to live my faith, I have to live what the Bible says. And so I have to look at that. What am I doing with that reading? And a lot of people just think, oh, I read my Bible every day. And that's great. And it is good. But it's what you do with that. So it's that moving deeper than just the basic knowledge. It kind of goes with lots of us have been in study groups, whether they're faith-based or not, just groups where you're learning, or conversations. You've been on teams that are learning. And really the question is, if you're going to really live that out, are you there for information or are you there for transformation? Because transformation is the key. You can gain all the knowledge you want in the world, and you can know, for example, in my faith world, you can know every Bible verse there is, you can know every scripture, you can come at me with every scripture. But if that's not transforming who you are, you're not really living out your faith.
Totally fair. So I have this recollection of one of the times a number of years ago that I had started a devotional, and it was one of those online devotionals that came to my phone every morning. And so I would read it, and there would be a scripture verse and some message, and I would think about that. And then there would be 3 verses for further reading. And I remember kind of that transition between information and transformation, like you're talking about, right? Because I remember for about 9 months of the year-long study in this, I didn't realize that you could simply click on those verse buttons and be taken to the actual scriptures and read them. I'm like, oh yeah, there's more further study, right? There's further study. And at some point there was this transformation where I went, well, I should click on this and I should read this and I should study more into it. And I should see what the application is for me, for my life today. You know, not just this initial paragraph and one verse, but let's dig deeper. And it was fun to realize that, oh, I was doing it to check a list. I was doing it to say that I was reading, or to sort of get the surface, I think, that year. And then that moment where I went, wait, I'm not doing this just to check a box. I'm doing this because I want to be transformed by the renewing of my mind. And so how do I get deeper? How do I dig deeper into that? And it turned out it was just a click of a button.
Yeah, isn't that fun? Sometimes it's that simple. I always remember a group that I was in that changed me the most, because we challenged each other all the time. For example, we would say, I'm going to go do this. And then we'd come back next week and, did you do it? And if you didn't, we would get on each other's case. And I remember one time I said, oh, I just hate this. And they said, what? I said, because the stronger you become in your faith, the more you have to say no to things that you don't want to say no to. And, sometimes they're not even big things. You just know that that's not really where you need to be. Yeah. And so it does make a difference. It's also, I look at that whole church thing, lots of people go to church. Yep. And we've talked about being the church instead of going to church. And that's important. And that's one thing the pandemic has just given us a great opportunity to actually be the church. I know in our case, it's been amazing, because now every day we have some online conversation with somebody from church. We have online music once a week. The opportunities of being the church are so wide now that I hope when things get back to whatever normal is going to be, that they still have those opportunities, because we really do have to be the church. The building is nice and it's fun and it's great to gather together, but it really isn't living out your faith at all by that. You bet. And so that's been just a joy for me to find what we can do. I will say though, we have gone back, and about 40 people out of 300 are going to church right now, but I do miss that. That connection is important. The connection is very important at church. But again, to make sure you are being that church. Yep.
Living it out on a daily basis. So to your point, that first tip to having a happy heart is living out your faith. If you say you have a faith, then don't just give it lip service, right? Live it out. Give it foot service and hand service and whole body service where it makes sense. So first one, how do you get a happy heart? So we need to make sure that the first one is that we're living out our faith. We're living our faith, not just talking about our faith. So a second one is remembering your values. You talked about 4 ways to get a happy heart. Number 2 is to remember your values. Now that's an interesting, how are values different from faith, and where are you going with that one, Nancy?
Well, we all have values, or say we have values. And hopefully, if I were to say to you, Sinikka, what are your values? You could come up with them. And without thinking, because sometimes people have to stop and think about them. And sometimes I do. I think, what do I really value? One of the probably best activities I ever did when I was working on my Christian coaching was a value activity where we had a sheet of probably 99 values. And obviously some of them meant the same thing. They were just worded differently. But the activity was that I was to take those and come up with 3 to 5 of my most important values. Then I was to give that same sheet to somebody in my family, a friend of mine, and a colleague. And we were to look at, does that all come up? Am I living out my values? Do people know what my values are? Well, the interesting thing was I gave it to a colleague that I worked with for about 15 years. I gave it to a friend who I'd had for about 30 years, and I gave it to my husband. Now, I got married for the first time at 54, and we had not even been married a year. So I had given him this. So the 3 come back, and 2 of them were right on. And of course, those 2 right on were my colleague and my friend that I'd known for years. And so it was very interesting. Not that my husband was way off, but it gave me a moment to think, what am I doing to make him think this is more important when I had this more important?
Mm-hmm.
And so really with our values, we have to look about, what am I doing to show those? How do people know that those are my values without me having to tell them? And that we're in a hard place in that, because our world tends to value work and money and power and things and self-sufficiency, and it's all about me. And so you really have to look at that. If I don't value those things, how do I live around that? I always go back to my friend who was a single mom, and her son played Little League Baseball. And she told them her son was not playing on Sundays.
Mm-hmm.
And that's a pretty big call, because there's a lot of games on Sundays.
A lot of games on Sundays.
Yeah. And you know what? She had just decided that wasn't going to happen.
Yep.
And so he didn't play on Sundays.
Yep.
And he missed a few games because of that, and then we had to work into that. But she talked to him about it, and he was okay. And I just always so proud of that moment, because I thought that took a lot of strength. And you had to really value her Sundays and her church that went with her faith of saying no to her son on Sundays. That always has stuck out in my mind. Then I had another friend who said she didn't value things, but they were always in debt because they were buying too many things. And so I would talk to her about that. I'd say, well, this is what you say, but this is what I see.
Mm-hmm.
Because I think when we're talking our values, we have to be willing to show those values, and we have to be willing for people to call us out on those. We have to be challenged by that. Because if you're really going to remember your values and you're going to really live them out, you have to be willing to challenge yourself, have others challenge you. For example, I say I value my health, but lately I haven't shown that. I'm an ice cream freak. And last week I had, out of 4 days when we were in Ohio, I had ice cream 3 days. There's nothing wrong with having ice cream.
Nothing wrong with having ice cream.
No, not at all. But 3 days out of 4 probably isn't very healthy. When it's hot, I don't want to go walking because it's so hot, well, I can walk inside. You can do things. So you have to really look at, if I say I value that, am I doing that? That's the good thing I love about anytime I talk about a happy heart, it makes me stop and look. Because it was really the other day when I was working on what I wanted to say here that I looked at the health part of me, and I thought, I say I value that, but I'm not doing that right now. So it was my challenge to myself to step up. And how do you do that? For example, for me, my healthy thing, I call it, I'm a 5-year-old kid. I have on my refrigerator, and I haven't had it on there for 3 weeks, my little chart of my 8 things I want to accomplish every day, from starting with my devotion to getting my 10,000 steps in to not eating sweets. 8 things, and I want to get 6 out of 8. And out of my week, I want to get 5 out of 7 days. And
nice.
When I had it up there, man, I was crossing those off. And the minute I took it down, it's funny. So whatever works for you, to have something in place so you can really look at, what? I am doing what I value. I am doing these things that I think are important.
Absolutely.
I always look at families, the workload in our country is crazy. And so many people say they value family, but they miss concerts and they miss ball games because they're working. And you got to really figure out, how can I do that? How can I work around that? And we all know that sometimes there's no option,
Right.
but sometimes there are options, and we just don't take them because we're focused on the value of the world instead of our values. So when you remember your values, you really want to maybe even do that value activity. What is it you say you value, and what other people say you value?
You bet.
And are you living those out?
Nancy, as I relate back to this and the time in my life where I know my heart got happier, it was a moment that I had been out of whack, right? I'd said that I value family, but I'd been running the business for a few years, and I'd been working, all day, much into the night, and weekends. I'd been working weekends. And my kids were in school most of the day, and so they didn't notice that I was working all day. And they, went to bed early, so they didn't notice how late I worked, but they noticed that I was working weekends. And somewhere along the line, an observation was made that, hey, Mom, are you working this weekend, or are you available? Can we play? And I remember how that just struck me. And I say I value family. I say to my friends, I say to my colleagues, I say to my team members, family first, but here I was working weekends. And that's not a way to put family first when I already have a day job that is designed to be accomplished within the work week. And so that year, December 31st, I gave up weekends. And for the entire next year, I had a full weekend. I had gone from something like 677 hours that I had put in over weekends to the following year when I gave up weekends. I had 5. During the entire year, there were 5 hours that I worked on a Saturday or Sunday. And my heart was so happy. It was so great to be able to reconnect with my kids and to not lose out on those moments because I hadn't been living what I said I valued.
When I think you said it right there, you feel that happy heart peace when you're doing what you believe in.
Yeah, absolutely. So let's get to the third one. First 2. The first one was living your faith. These are 4 ways. We're with Nancy Hanna. 4 ways to get a happy heart. The first one is to live your faith. Don't just talk about it, but live it. The second one is remember your values. And the third one, reignite your passion. Let's talk about that, Nancy. I can't imagine that your passion ever needs reigniting. It's always going.
Well, you remember when you're a kid and just life is just fun and you just love to do this. And I have a 4-year-old grandson, he's excited about little bugs and we go to the park and he just has a passion for living. And we all have a passion for something. And too many times we've forgotten that passion. I don't care if that passion is for riding your bike or being with friends or cooking or, whatever it is. You have to remember your passions because that's what brings us joy. So you need to stop and think for a minute. What is it that just thinking about makes you smile? What is it that just thinking about gets you so excited that you just want to do it? Because too many times we've let our passions, they've been put to the side because we're too busy. Favorite passion story, I think, is my mom is 91. At 88, she began painting. She's always had dabbled in that kind of, but you know what? She just wanted to do it. And she's painting. When she was 90, 13 of us flew out to Oregon for her 90th birthday. My sister lives out there and she sold one of her paintings for $300. I know, but it's just so fun to see that joy in her. And it gives her, in her case, I know because she's living out a passion, is why she stays so young and why she's so healthy is because she is doing what she loves. For many of us, we're very blessed, as I am, that our passions are part of our callings. Mm-hmm. I love learning. I love people. I love empowering. And so that's been in ever since I wanted to be a teacher in 2nd grade. And so I've had an easier time to live out my passions and keep them going. Because it's all about, for me, empowering and the joy and just enjoying life. And that's easier for me. But I know for some of us, our passions aren't part of our job. You may be a school teacher, but your real passion is baking. You may be a big executive and your real passion is gardening. So the question is, how do you get those back in your world? It goes back to you, Sinikka, on weekends. Mm-hmm. When you're working all weekend, you don't have time for any of those passions. You don't have time. And it's the passions that bring us that joy in our happy heart. It's the passions that we just do it because we love it. We just do it because it's fun. And we don't even have to be excellent at it. It's just something we enjoy, something that has been given to us to have fun with. And when we have fun with it, the people around us have fun with it. Yep. So it really is asking yourself, what are my passions and am I living them out? How am I putting them in my life? And if I'm not putting them in my life, how can I get back to that?
How can I do that? I read an article just yesterday that struck me because I think about the so many people who are in a job and to your point, Nancy, it's a job that they're in that is not aligned with their passion necessarily. And there are moments where people can say, I'm leaving this discipline to go to this other discipline because I'm more passionate. I can leave job A to go to job B. There are people who have that opportunity. And there are a lot of people that don't. There are circumstances in which people find themselves that they, for whatever reason, they can't make a shift. The financial pressures are too great or the limitations of where they are. They can't make a full career shift. But the article that I was reading yesterday talked about even something like a dual career. So not 2 40-hour-a-week jobs, but I have a day job that does this and my hobby or something also brings me so much passion that I can also do. So like your mom and painting, you wouldn't call painting a career, but it is it is something that can bring in a source of income, and that
Mhm.
source of income can help fund that hobby. So if you
Yep.
make $300 for a painting, then you can buy more paint and you can paint more and have more opportunities with that. So one of the examples was a guy who was in a job that he didn't love, but really loved music, and started a band and started a traveling band, and was able to connect with his kids that way because they wanted to be part of the band, right? And so I don't know, you don't have to have a career that you are passionate about to put passion in your life. Would you agree?
Yes. And I laughed that you just mentioned music because I was thinking a friend of mine, and he's an actuary. So, he's a numbers guy, and he's pretty straight and black and white, but his passion is music. And so he's a worship leader, and you can see a totally different person when he's up there singing and leading worship. And so he's able to do what he's skilled at,
Mhm.
but his passion is something totally different. So it's really cool to see that in action.
Great, great example. All right, so let's get on to number 4. We've got 4 ways to get a happy heart. We can live out our faith. We can remember our values. We can reignite our passion. And then this last one is on laughter, right? You got to laugh more. And I am just anxious I don't laugh enough. I move very, very focused through my life. And just in the short time that I've known you, Nancy, that my eyes have been open to some of the really cool stuff that you're bringing to the table about laughter. And I'm hungry for more. So tell us more about laughing.
Yes, this is one of my favorite pieces, laughing. Kids laugh up to 300 times a day. Think about it, 300 times a day. I have a nephew who's 3. I have a grandson who's 4, and they can just laugh for the craziest things. My nephew and I do a lot of gibberish, and we'll just gibber back and forth, and he just laughs and laughs, and so then we just laugh. Laughter is contagious. While a child can laugh up to 300 times, adults on average 15 times a day. I know it's not very much. And you've all heard the saying that laughter is the best medicine. And there's been so much research out there that tells you it really is good for you. First of all, the reason I love one of the reasons is because when I talk about my health and I talk about getting healthy, laughter is a workout. I do laughter seminars, and we talk about running 2 or 3 miles, and they all look at me like, I don't want to do that. And I always say, well, what about if you do it through laughing? Because, if you laugh for even just 20 seconds, your heart rate goes up for 2 or 3 minutes. It's like you've been doing that rowing on the boat thing. And so it's amazing. Think about when you laugh till your stomach hurts. You're working out your abs inside. And it's crazy, all the systems inside of you that are changed when you laugh. Because when you spend time in laughter, what you're doing is you're giving your internal organs a massage.
Oh, that's fun.
I know. One year I gave a Christmas present to me, and that was to have a massage every month. And my gosh, by about the 4th month in, I was so relaxed. My stress was gone, and I could just feel that. And our body gets that inside our organs when we have laughter in our life. And so that's very, very important. What's amazing about it is the health benefits. It lowers your blood pressure. It kicks in your natural endorphins. So it really raises your immune system. In fact, one of the interesting facts is that up to 90% of our doctor visits are somehow tied to stress. And so if we could put more laughter in, which kicks in our immune system, which de-stresses us, we're going to have medically, you'll be surprised at what happens. Another thing about laughter is it really helps you sleep. Now, I mentioned my husband is a former cop, and he watches a lot of cop shows, and shows that there's a lot of guns and killing in them. And he watches them before he goes to bed. And then he complains that he can't sleep. So I try to tell him, and he did this one night. One night is all that he's done it so far, but it worked. I said, I want you to watch some humor thing before you go to bed. I want you to laugh. So he watched a thing called Dry Run, and it was just comedy. And he even said, yeah, I went right to sleep. And I'm like, ding, 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 ding. So it changes us. It just changes what our body does. It changes how we feel. It re-energizes us. It's so cool. I did a laughter at a senior expo, and there was one lady there who had lost her husband 3 or 4 months prior. And she said when she got done, she goes, I haven't laughed or smiled since my husband died. But this was so fun because it just brings out that inner joy. It gets you excited. You can't help but but laugh when other people are laughing. The night before that particular session, I was having a girlfriend come that day with me to take some pictures. And so we were in the car and I told her, I said, well, let's practice laughing. And she said, what? I said, well, we're just going to start laughing in the car. And I'm driving. And she thought, you're weird. And I said, yeah, I am. And so I start laughing. And so she started laughing. And pretty soon we were just laughing because we couldn't stop. And there was nothing we were laughing about in particular. So it is amazing what laughter does for you.
I have this wonderful memory of traveling across country with my mom and my daughters and one of my nieces and one of my nephews. And we were traveling across the country to get from the Midwest out to Massachusetts, where my mom spends her summers. She lives there now, but back then she would summer out there. And as we were driving, we had reached a point where we were kind of at wit's end, right? Everybody, you've been in the car you're on day 2 and it's 8 hours into day 2 and nobody's really friendly and nobody's really kind. And I don't remember what it was, but somebody did something that just struck a funny bone in me. Mom was driving and I was sitting in the passenger seat and something struck me funny. So I got the giggles and then I just started using random objects to put on this puppet show. And we were in stitches for easily an hour in the car, just laughing about the most ridiculous things. A puppet show with, one was I don't even know what I had in my hands. It might've been a McDonald's bag or something that had turned into a puppet or whatever. And just making up these ridiculous stories, and we made games and we were just laughing the whole time. And it made it so that the rest of the trip was so much better.
It's just amazing what it does. And it's amazing what it does in the workplace. One of the things I do is offer a 5-session series on laughter in the workplace, because in the workplace, first of all, it builds community. When you can laugh together, you can work together. It's amazing how that works. And it builds that trust, because someone who is relaxed enough to laugh with you and around you and you feel comfortable, you're going to trust them more. It builds that creativity. In fact, just take gibberish. If you start doing gibberish for 5 or 10 minutes, your creative juices start going because it wakes up the right side of the brain. And so people who have humor in their life, people who laugh, are more creative, they're more productive. I know, it's just amazing
Really
what that happens. And it's really cool because when I go into teams and work on this, when they're done, they're just like, that's so simple and yet so complex.
Yeah.
You know, that the effects of it for doing something as simple as laughing. And it's so fun because I go in and we learn about laughing. We learn how it builds community. We learn how it de-stresses us. And then we do laughter activities that we just do and laugh. And one of my favorites is I tell everyone, whether I'm doing a laughter session or I'm just talking about laughter, is start every day in the mirror and laugh at yourself. I know. It just sounds weird. And when I go to sessions, I bring everybody a handheld mirror and we just look and laugh. And it's just fun. And your day just starts better. There's just this, you just let out some stress and brought in some joy.
Oh, that's fun. You said something a minute ago that struck an interesting chord with me. It was, you talked about people who laugh are more creative. And I think somewhere in my own sort of conclusions that I've drawn, that it was something like creative people laugh more, but you might have pointed to an inverse, that people who laugh more might simply be more creative.
It does. It's amazing that adding a little laughter makes you more creative. And it's like, what happens? Well, it gets your natural endorphins going in your brain. And so it just wakes up that right side. And you'll find probably what you said there is the people who are sometimes more right side brained anyway, they have more creativity because they use that side of their brain more. So they probably do laugh more because it goes together. But laughing can cause that to happen.
Oh, that's so great. That's so great. I think about many of us here in Midwestern financial services places are, we're kind of serious people. That a lot of the workplaces are not too serious, but serious enough that just outbursts of laughter would raise an eyebrow, or, we have to keep a straight face or a collected face. And so for some of us, we were raised in kind of a way that makes us go, spontaneous laughter or intentional laughter. Whoa, that's for, that's for after dinner, that we don't do that here at work. But I think you're arguing, or you're making the point that laughter at work is really, really useful.
It is. And it's fun when I talk to leaders because they think that same thing. They think, well, we're not going to, why would we want to do this in work? And so we talk about what's going to happen, what's going to change, what's that going to look like? How is that going to make people better workers? Because even you get energized. I talk about how even one session with laughter. I do laughter parties at homes, or I was doing laughter parties at home before COVID. And just that energizing when you leave, it's just a natural reaction to something that is natural to us. Think about it. 300 times a day, kids laugh. Where did we squelch that?
Yeah.
And
How
so
did we come so far?
yeah, we got to get back to that. That's a good thing. It's a natural thing, and it has so many benefits.
Fantastic. Well, Nancy, thank you so much for this. So you've just brought us through 4 ways to get a happy heart: living your faith, remembering your values, reigniting your passion, and laughing. Just really great examples, things that I've seen you live out on a daily basis in the short time even that I've known you. But one of the questions, because this is, of course, the Even Better podcast. So a question that I always ask at the end is, what's making you even better right now?
That's an interesting question in this day. And I would say conversation. Having conversations with people that I normally wouldn't have. In fact, the other day, I pulled up to the stoplight and a person of color pulled up to the stoplight. He had his window down. So I knew I had a good minute. So I rolled down my window and I said, "Hey, I want you to know I'm starting to have conversations about things I never knew I didn't know." And he smiled and he made a comment and I made a comment back, because I've learned that when I wasn't having these conversations, I really wasn't doing some of my things. I really wasn't living out my faith. I really wasn't living out my values. So conversation around who I am, who I want to be, conversation on what can I do to change the world to be a better place, conversations with people about what they can do in business to make the world a better place, like adding the laughter or reigniting the passions, whatever those things are, but really having conversations in situations I haven't had before.
Oh, thank you, Nancy. So you have a coaching product that is available, or is going to be available shortly on the Your Clear Next Step website. So let's talk about you. You are a coach and you do coaching and you have a product. Would you be willing to share with us a little bit about that coaching product?
Yes. What I have decided to do is to take all of those things I've worked on through education, through empowering, through challenging in life coaching, and take it into the arena of laughter, because laughter does so much for us. So I do offer for team managements, for leadership teams, for any workplace, to have me come in and work with their teams on laughter. The one is, I really like the 5-session one because they can see a difference. They'll see a difference in the productivity. They'll see a difference in energy. They'll see a difference in negative conversations. Mm-hmm. 1 session is great because it gets you energized and it's fun. Yeah. 5 sessions will get you so laughter becomes a part of who you are. Laughter becomes a part of you personally. Laughter becomes a part of your team, becomes part of your workplace, which changes everything for the better. So it's a great arena to look at something that's simple and fun, and yet deep, engaging, and changes a lot of things.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Nancy. So to all of our listeners today, thank you for joining us for the Even Better podcast. This has been Sinikka Waugh with Your Clear Next Step, and Nancy Hanna joining us today. Nancy, thank you so much for being here today.
Thank you. It's been great.
Thank you for tuning in today. The Even Better podcast will be back with more content soon. But in the meantime, subscribe to our podcast or check out our website at yourclearnextstep.com for more information. See you next episode.